guess I do want to play a little catch up after I wasn't able to post videos a couple months ago. Plus, I really want to cover the 14th episode of this series for reasons I'll explain later. We open with Mojo in his most natural habitat. No, I don't mean in a tree, but rather in a state of sulking after yet another loss to the girls. To make matters worse, in spite of it being autumn, climate change was still very much a thing.
Man, that was a good movie, an inconvenient truth.
Though it didn't deter the Amoeba Boys and their single-celled forms. They were trying to cause trouble, maybe jaywalk a little, which prompted Peach to deploy the girls. Naturally, they didn't see them as any sort of threat, especially when they asked the super heroines how to commit crimes. I mean, yeah, the OG would teach them, but I don't think bank systems work the same way they did back then. I mean, really, it's all about the cryptocurrency these days. Don't worry, it's all gonna work out, I swear. With that, the girls left them hanging, but Mojo saw potential in them and thus decided to team up. Now, this might be very loosely based off of a Season 2 episode from the OG series, You Snooze, You Lose, in which Mojo and the Amoeba Boys became unintentional allies. In it, Mojo concocted a plan that he literally called
Mojo Jojo's best plan to destroy the Powerpuff Girls ever!
God, I love that monkey. But after conking out like me after editing these videos, he lost a plan and it fell into the hands of the Amoeba Boys, who ended up getting the girls to create their own weapon of destruction. Yeah, now that I think about it, many of the OG Amoeba Boy episodes really just had the girls employing it on themselves. Anyway, to get the girls' attention, Mojo had the aquatic-based creatures graffiti up the entire town. Oh, so this is where Nintendo got the idea for the Splatoons. It worked, and they trapped our heroines in an electrified cage that they launched into space. Of course, it didn't hold them for long, but to Mojo, and especially the AB's credit, they managed to do some significant damage to the town. Seriously, their giant yellow blob form looks weak, but they did more than the OG ever did in the entirety of the series. You know, aside from that one thing.
Hello, you're sick? Sick, everyone's sick!
However, the girls quickly realized that while humidity had no effect on the sentient water molecules, Mojo and his metal machine were a different case. This led to Momoko pulling off a rather clever plan of using Mojo's spray paint to blacken up his machine and have them magnify the sun right onto the color that absorbs light and heat. You'd almost think this was a plan by the OG Blossom and her literal encyclopedic knowledge. But to Momoko's unique credit, she has street smarts, so she can come up with clever, innovative plans that take advantage of common knowledge. I think we've all worn black at some point and know how it gets hot, rather than overly complex strategies like the original. I'm also guessing it helps that the spray paint was likely flammable, allowing the girls to defeat both him and the AB at the same time. Granted, the town still looked like the setting to Jet Set Radio, but hey, that's what tax dollars are for. The second half of the episode featured the mayor arriving at the lab, and in a clever little bit of attention to detail, they had him go down the stairs backwards just to hold off on this big reveal. Is that supposed to be your Two-Face cosplay? Because that's not a bad base to start from. Nah, but seriously, that little stair detail was just brilliant at both preventing a potential plot hole and hinting that something was off. Anyway, the mayor, as well as several other citizens, had their colors partially taken, not all of it, just whatever a flash of light managed to capture. Now again, this could be a reference to the OG with the episode Mine for a Change. I'll spoil it right now, the monster isn't something that somehow avoids a lawsuit from the Pokemon IP. The mayor, of course, wanted the girls to stop whatever monster was doing this and restore everyone's colors, especially his. Well, if anything, this show has some of the better politician writing I've seen in a while. The girls split up to find the monster, and Momoko stumbled upon him and his very creepy-ass smile. Granted, I'd still take this over the mime, but the fact that he called out to her from a dark alley certainly didn't help matters. And after we got the entirety of their transformation sequences, likely to fill up time in the episode, we got a fairly well animated fight between the camera monster and the girls. Seriously, props to Natsuki Watanabe for some good bursts of animation in this one. Ultimately though, the fight stopped kind of suddenly after the monster began to tell his backstory. As it turned out, he was originally an outdated camera that could only take in black and white photos.
By any chance, sir, do you have a son who looks like a reject Casper?
So, Miden Sr. had been thrown out in spite of still being usable, and as Kaoru pointed out, at least having a retro appeal, which they further hammered home with the guy on an old bike and a trumpet randomly just passing by. Real solid there, y'all. The mayor agreed that whoever threw him out was an ungrateful blowhard, which triggered the camera because the one who threw him out was the mayor.
名や市長そんな目で私を見ないでくれ
Again, great politician writing in the show.
This made Miden Sr. grow giant, and while we unfortunately didn't get an awesome fight with the girls, as I think they ran out of animation budget by this point, we did at least get to see more of Momoko's ingenuity, as she had Ken reflect the monster's light attack right back onto him, defeating him, and returning the color to the town, sadly without a great music sequence to accompany it. With that, the episode ended with the girls having their picture taken with the old camera.
This is yet another fun, simple episode, though also with some very clever little bits of direction and writing.
In the case of both conflicts, things were resolved kind of suddenly with the girls' trip to space not even really meaning much, and the camera monster being defeated by a big satellite dish that the Utonium lab just had, but at least the setups to their defeat were kind of clever. Momoko really got to show off her stuff in this one. Again, she's not like the OG Blossom, but is capable of thinking on her feet, like with the black paint strategy, which was particularly smart, as was some of the direction in this episode.
Still, this did end up being a bit of a shorter review, so let's go right into the next, which just so happened to be the very first episode I ever caught this series, as well as the debut of probably the most OG of OG villains for the girls.
Yes, this was in fact the first episode I ever caught this series during a trip to Japan. I was just watching Cartoon Network Japan and found this very different take on a Western cartoon I was kind of familiar with. And thankfully, this episode had a whole gang of familiar faces, as this one saw the debut of the show's version of the Gangrene Gang. Which, fun fact, along with being canonically the first villains the OG Powerpuffs ever encountered when factoring in the prequel movie, they were also the villains the girls fought in the opening theme to Craig McCracken's original Whoop-Ass Stew pilot.
With that kind of pedigree, you'd almost forget that they're just a whole team of jobbers.
Anyway, I'll discuss a little more about how I got into this series at the end, but for now, let's actually talk about the episode. We open with the girls and the profs eating out, with Utonium again acting as though he was the father to all of them. Though before we can further think about the implications of that, a gang of greens soon arrived. The leader ordered meals for all of them, and then proceeded to slip a roach into his starter salad. He used this to try and force the restaurant into feeding them for free.
Though, does he know finding a roach or two is just typical service at Denny's?
The girls rightfully called them out, and when they refused to back down, they went into action. With that, we then got the formal introductions of this version of the Gangrene Gang. And second to Fuzzy, these villains were pretty much the closest to the originals in terms of design and personality, especially Ace. Thus, just like them, and in spite of having a few new powers like Grubber having shapeshifting, the girls easily dispatched them.
Probably should have saved up some of those personas, dude.
Realizing that they were originally human, they tried to revert them back to normal, but for reasons unexplained, they were unable to. My best headcanon is that their powers were so docile that they had already been engraved naturally into their DNA. In short, they were so weak that they couldn't remove anything. Still, they did the smart thing and had Peach memorize their scent before sending the delinquents back home. This then gave us an interesting new facet to the gang, as I don't think we ever did see their families. I mean, it seemed like the OG wanted a family, even having Sedusa become their surrogate mother for an episode, but in spite of their mostly humanoid appearances, they just seemed like monsters without any sort of families. Here though, since they were all originally human, we got to see their less than ideal family lives that would somewhat justify why they became a gang in the first place. Ace came from a bit of an over-conservative family that couldn't agree on how to raise their son. Billy lived with a controlling Karen for a mother. Arturo's family couldn't even remember that he was their son. Snake came from a rich, unintended family. And Grubber... Don't
ask! For God's sakes, don't ask!
But yeah, this did add an interesting new layer to this version of the gang. Not exactly making them at all sympathetic, as most of this was still played off as a joke, but it's also not a bad commentary on broken family dynamics in Japan. Also, yeah, Arturo, the one Hispanic member of the gang, had a stereotypically overcrowded immigrant family.
I would say I'd hope Toei would get over these outdated stereotypes, but we all know that ain't happening.
Wanting to raise their street credit, the Gangrene Gang tried to figure out ways to defeat the Girlz. Obviously, the numbers game didn't matter against all three of them, but they figured they might stand a chance against just one of them. Thus, definitely taking influence from their first appearance in the original series, they targeted the Buttercup of this team.
正義のヒロインだとか言われてチヤホヤされやがって。グリーンの風上にも置けねえ。
Guys, Hal Jordan, Bruce Banner, Ollie Queen, Britt Reed, and Deku all want to have a few words with you.
Also, yeah, thankfully they didn't totally adapt that episode that, by modern standards, doesn't exactly hold up all that well.
You know, kid, you're not so bad. You can hang out with us anytime.
よし、警察。わかった。
They decided to ambush Kaoru at a soccer game where she was going to present the winning team with a trophy.
さあ、グリーンレンジャーズ対レッドファイターズ。歴史的一戦が始まります。
Are Tommy and Jason finally going to settle their differences?
To their credit, the gang did come up with some decent plans, but didn't factor in the aggressiveness of a rampant soccer fan.
やったー、1点取った。いけいけ、もう1点。
Eventually, they decided to just drop any sort of subtlety and lured Kaoru onto the field, and again, they came up with a good plan, making it look like they absolutely failed at recreating the Go Ranger Hurricane, only to blind her with some green dust. However, when Snake tried to massage her into submission, yes, that's his superpower, all Kaoru had to do was tense up her muscles, and it didn't work.
I did not think that through!
From there, she made quick work of them, allowing the game to end without any further issue. With that, the episode ended with Ace swearing that they'd come back stronger next time, which, unless you can turn into a giant crow and then later resurrect into a totally OP form, I highly doubt that.
But yeah, while this was certainly a fun reinterpretation of a classic PPG staple, I do think that the one thing that actually stuck with me the most when I saw this back in Japan was the second ending theme.
Yeah, after every 13 episodes, the series would switch out EDs, and I think each of them was meant to focus on a different member of the team, with the exception of the first one, which seemed to represent the entire team.
And while it might be the nostalgia talking, I gotta say, I think Momoko's is my personal favorite.
Don't get me wrong, Kaoru and Miyako's are great too, but this little number, I think it has the best animation, my personal favorite song from this series, Look by Halle Kali, and the best story to it. Yeah, believe it or not, this little music video that's less than 2 minutes long managed to tell a rather melancholic tale of Momoko turning down an invitation to hang out with her friends after she got a bad horoscope that said she should avoid hanging out with them or else they might get into a fight. Of course, she would come to regret this decision, even foregoing her usual sweets binge. Instead, she did a little superhero skydive to recollect all the fun times she had with her friends. Times that were far from over, as Miyako and Kaoru got together along with the professors to keep her company, stupid horoscopes be damned. The visual storytelling here was just so well done that I was able to pick up the gist of what was going on, even though my Japanese wasn't all that great at the time. To me, this, along with the Digimon Tamers ending theme, My Tomorrow, really left a significant impact on me, as both were fantastic, and really got me into wanting to listen to more J-pop.
So yeah, a lot of this video was just so that I could fanboy over that ED, though that's not to say that there was nothing to these episodes.
While it is always fun to see interpretations of characters we're familiar with from the OG, it's also clear that this show is doing its own thing for the most part. Even when I tried to make connections to the original with these episodes, they were minute at best. Thus, we got some interesting new stuff like the camera monster and its themes of respecting the retro, which, on a side note, seems to be kind of a thing with Toei, as they even recently made a whole episode of Zenkaiser dedicated to that. and in turn, Momoko got some good moments to shine and show off her creativity. Meanwhile, with the Gangrene Gang Z, while they actually are kind of close to the originals in terms of personality and design, giving them stuff like superpowers that don't require radioactive candy, and actual families help to distinguish them. Plus, come on, Ace is pretty much the prototype close, I kind of have to love him. Their Looney Tunes-esque attempts at trying to defeat Kaoru were both hilarious, and a good showing of their tenacity as the jobber squad of the show, along with the Amiibo Boys, even though they actually destroyed stuff. But yeah, overall, these were good episodes with some very fun villains, and the girls being surprisingly intuitive. Though seriously, where did that satellite come from? Did the prof still get cable?
Thank you for watching, and be sure to check back next week for maybe a Doremi doubleheader too. Honestly, this double review was a bit of a spur of the moment kind of thing that I wanted to do after I realized I needed to play a little catch up. Don't worry, I'm not pushing myself, I produce this stuff as ideas come into my head. So look forward to that, as well as all my future videos. And until next time though, farewell for now my friends, and you know, I wonder how strong this black spray paint actually is.
Good show!
Well, time to find out. Fire in the hole!